Good afternoon, Darren. Thank you very much for joining me on Culture Corner this afternoon. It's nice to have you on the podcast.
Thanks very much, Adrian. It's lovely to be here.
Perfect. It's a little bit warm. I know you just told me you're in a nice air-conned room, so you'll be all right. But
I'm absolutely fine.
Well, hopefully I won't melt on you while we're doing this podcast. But as I said, thanks very much for joining me. For the listeners, obviously we spoke a few times now, and I know your background and who you are. But if you could just give a bit of an overview of who you are, your background, your experience, your leadership background, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So I work for Cambridge University Press and Assessment. I've probably been in the education business for the last 10 to 15 years, worked for the largest education provider, Pearson, 2 or 3 times, I think, both in consulting and permanent roles, and also some others in this area, in a range of different roles, all with some kind of technical angle, although my role here at CUP&A is as a technology director for one of our product groups. So I've held roles in digital product leadership. I've held roles in significant and major program leadership, and also obviously in technology leadership as well. And in my past, I've worked for FTSE 100 companies. I've also spent some time in consulting in the early years. I've been through Y2K, the dot-com bubble, and now going through the AI hype curve and maturing. So I've been around a while.
Yeah, fantastic. Plenty of experience for us to delve into during the podcast, which is fantastic. But it's we'll kick things off. I like to ask people about about how they got into technology, because I know within our sector there's a lot of talk about bringing people in from different backgrounds, and it was just how did you follow I suppose a traditional path, if you like, into tech, or what was your journey like?
No, not at all. So I never went to university for the standard bachelor's degree. I actually started my life attempting to be an accountant, and very quickly decided, no diss to any accountants out there, but I decided it wasn't for me anyway. And I was working in an accounts department in an organization, and they were doing an IBM AS400 implementation. And I'd always been interested in computers. I'd done some early programming on ZX81s for those of your listeners and watchers who know that kind of old tech, and the BBC Micros, etc. So I've always been interested in technology, and there was an opportunity to get involved in this project. And in those days, there weren't many people who really understood technology very well. And there was just a wonderful opportunity for someone who was interested, engaged, and willing to learn to get involved in what was really quite a new discipline in the world. And I took full advantage of that. I saw that, I was interested in it. I could see that there would be a career off the back of it. So I then went off and did some studying, did a certificate and diploma in computer science. So again, I never did the degree, although later on in life I did an MBA. And that was really the catalyst. And I've had a lot of different roles in technology in those early days, everything from sort of desktop network support all the way through to coding development, big database migrations, big systems implementations, and things like that. Early types of ERP type systems implementations, trotting around the country and parts of the world, putting in systems. So that was good fun. And then I moved into more big programs because my technical experience lended itself to technical enabled or technology enabled change, which a lot of organizations were going through as Web 2.0 was really starting to land, and people were seeing the benefits off the back of the dot-com boom in terms of what technology could do. I was responsible for the first website for a company that did legal, tax, and business information services, and things like that were super interesting. It was a fantastic time to be involved in technology. And then later I did quite a few roles in what was termed digital product leadership. And so I've probably been in a relatively senior leader role for the last maybe 25, 30, well, maybe not that long, maybe the last 20 years or so, in a variety of roles associated to technology. And then later in my career, I came right crashing back down into much more hardcore technology role, which I'm enjoying immensely. Although I think my most enjoyable role was when I had the digital product leadership and the technology team reporting into me at the same time, because I had the ability to work with the customers and really understand the problems to solve and the needs, and then have the ability and the team to actually go deliver that. That was just the best job. But at the moment, for the last nearly 9 years, it's been a much more of a purist technology leadership role.
Perfect. Thank you, Darren. Thank you. And just to quickly, very briefly touch on this, you mentioned that you moved on to a number of different roles and experienced a number of different things. Do you think that's for anyone coming out or starting in their tech career and has aspirations to maybe move up the ladder to leadership? Do you think that's really important, fundamentally important, to gain as much knowledge across diverse, I suppose, skill sets in tech as you can to shape you?
I think so. I think if you're aiming for C-level type role, then a broad church of experience in technology will give you credibility when you're talking to your teams who may well be a network engineer. You know, you can say, I remember that kind of problem you had. Or someone who's a software engineer or a data engineer, or someone who's supporting desktops, or et cetera, et cetera. Having that broader experience and been accountable, both hands-on in the early days and more leadership roles further in your career. If you want to be that C-level, it does help. Although there are roles, there are CTO roles that are very specific to engineering. You probably, for that kind of role, you need a very, I would say, vertical career through the engineering lens and architecture lens. But for me, it's worked out really well. And I feel I can bring different perspectives to the technical conversations I have with my colleagues. And I'm also more able to communicate in a way that my business colleagues feel like they're having a conversation that they can engage with and understand what I'm talking to them about, because I've got that experience of spending time with salespeople, spending time with marketing, spending time in customer services, etc., etc. So it does help. Well, it certainly helped me anyway.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. It gives people a really good insight. Thanks, Darren. One of the things that I wanted to dive into, because when we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, I found this really interesting. One of the things that you said to me was you delivered a training, you delivered a course to your SLT based on how to be a vulnerable leader. And I think, or being a vulnerable leader. And I think we know this is not true, but you hear lots of nonsense in the marketplace about vulnerability is a weakness, etc., etc. And it's not. It's important to be that vulnerable leader. So why? Just to get your thoughts on it, why is it important to be a vulnerable leader? And tell me a bit about the training course and how you delivered it and what was involved in it. So I think people get a real benefit from that.
So why vulnerable leader? It's not always been that way. When I started my career, it was, management was different to leadership. Leadership's coming later. And vulnerability was seen as a weakness. You don't want to show any weakness. Things have truly changed now, and it's a fundamental thing about having a high-performing team. To have a high-performing team, you need to build trust. Foundation of it all is trust. people need to feel safe. They need to feel psychologically safe. They need to trust their colleagues, and they also need to trust their leadership. And if you want that high performing team, then you also need to be a vulnerable leader yourself, because it gives people permission to do
Yeah.
that as well. And but it's with a purpose, in the course. I talked about where I'd make mistakes, and I gave an
Yeah.
example of my personal life where I'd made a mistake, and I gave an example in my work life. But both of them were for a purpose. They were both absolutely, genuinely true, and I'd made
Yeah.
a quite a considerable cock up. But it was told to also give a little bit of a narrative as well,
Yeah.
and that's important. And you have to show up and say, sometimes I just don't know the answer to that, and I need your
Yeah.
help to help me get
Yeah.
to that answer. It moves away from the thing of the leader always knows what the answer is.
Yeah.
The leader might give you an answer, but it might not be the right one, when actually the team or someone in the team does actually know perhaps a better answer. Um, and I think that if you can build that, if that, expressing a vulnerability leads to those foundations of trust and that psychological safety, then you've done the right thing. And sometimes it's also about just bringing people a little bit into your confidence. There are always things that I can't
Yeah.
tell my team, that
Yeah.
I hear about, that are based on plans, but the things I can tell them, I do. And I don't hold them to myself, and I talk to them, and I get their feedback, and I get their and not just questions. I want to hear that what their thoughts are, and how this will impact us, and how we can move forward together with this knowledge. And so these are the important things to me in any case.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of things that you mentioned there. So is how much should you share with your team? And I like the fact that where you can, you will
Yeah,
share, because a lot of people will just ring fence it and keep them to themselves, won't they? But I think
yeah.
if you don't share, quite often I'll be thinking worst case. I'd have gone off on a tangent and be thinking, absolute worst case scenario disaster. Whereas if you share a bit of information with people, either they're a lot more comfortable.
Yes, and some people have. I mean, I've come across people like this who think that knowledge is power,
Yeah.
and actually, it's powerless, because you then become an island on your own. By sharing what you can with people, you get different perspectives on a particular problem that is going to have to be dealt with by you and the team. And so where I can, I do share. There are some things, whenever I do a town hall with a wider team, I'll share what I can. And this is everyone in my organisation, and obviously with the
Right.
senior leadership, they'll get to hear perhaps a little bit more. But there are always things that I can't, and that's just life. And some things are confidential, and that's also part of being a leader as well.
Yeah. And if somebody asks you something, you would say to them, "Look, I can't tell you this," and would you explain the reason? Not
Oh
obviously,
yeah,
you can't go into detail. You'd explain the reason why. Look at why you can't tell them,
yeah,
just so that they do get
yeah,
a bit of a picture.
yeah. So sometimes I get someone who'll come and say to me, "I've heard a rumor. Can you confirm this or not?"
Right.
And I will say, well, I'm not so sure I'm going to respond to a rumor anyway, but because I'm not big on the whole gossiping side. But
Yeah.
I will say to them, there's information that is confidential at the moment, but what I will promise you
Right.
is, when I can talk to you about it, I absolutely will. And that's my commitment to you. That's the virtual handshake. Is
Yeah.
no, I can't. This is why I can't, because it is confidential for XYZ reason. But when I am able to have that conversation with you, I promise you I will do that. And I would say, almost in almost all cases, when you have that conversation with someone, they'll say, "Okay, I understand your position. That's great. Thank you very much. When we can have that conversation, we'll have it." And that for me tends to work out quite well.
Yeah. So fronting it, have that discussion rather than hiding away from it, or
Or not saying anything,
yeah,
which is the worst thing. Is you know, you shouldn't close down that kind of conversation, because if someone's got a concern, you shouldn't close down the concern. You need to address the concern. Now, they might not be 100% happy that you've not been able to give them all the
yeah,
information, but you've explained why, and that gives them context. And you've explained when you can, if you're able to do that, or that you make a commitment to talk to them when you're able to. And as I say, most people are very happy with that.
happy with that. Fair point. And you mentioned about vulnerability. You shared a personal situation and a work situation.
Yeah.
When you're going into one of these environments, you're doing a course, you're coaching, or you're creating this vulnerable leader environment. Would you always go? You would always go first, and right?
Always. Yes.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yes. And it's sometimes, sometimes you need to lead from behind, and sometimes you need to lead from the front. And
Right.
part of being a good leader is knowing when to lead
Yeah.
from behind and let your team learn. And the other is to know when you need to demonstrate a behavior. And this is very much me demonstrating what trust looks like. And I'm demonstrating trust with you by telling you something from my personal life, which during the course I did say to people, you don't have to, it's up to you.
Yeah.
But everyone did. But you have to show what it looks like. You have to demonstrate to people the vulnerability, and then they say, "Oh, he's happy to talk about those sorts of things." So I'm going to be much happier about
Yeah.
talking about those sorts of things. And it's honestly, it can be incredibly emotional at times. The stories that people, because I've run this kind of thing many times in the past, and oh my goodness, some of the stories that people then will come out with it can be incredibly emotional. And people will share things that they were even themselves surprised that they were sharing, both in terms of a personal context and a work-based context. And you know, that's the beginning of building that trust, which is the beginning of building that high-performing team. That collaboration and working together is it's a super important thing to do. But it's just one of the tools in the leadership kit bag that we bring out, and help our team understand what good really looks like.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Is there? I was going to ask you about trust. You said there these are all little pieces that go along to building the trust within teams. Is there anything else? Anybody that's listening to this, say, how else can I go about building trust within my teams? Is there anything else that you think you'll go to when you're building a team, or you first go into a role? Is there anything you try and
Yeah.
do?
So there's a trust equation,
Ah,
which is
okay.
credibility. So you need to be credible. You need to be reliable. You need to do what you say you're going to do. So I sometimes have challenges with this, I have to say, because my time is often quite poor. I'll get that purchase order signed off today. Well, you probably should. I have to admit I don't always. But you know, as I say no as I do. Credibility and reliability is very important. And then what we've just been talking about, that intimacy,
Yeah.
sharing yourself, being a human being. You're not just a figurehead, you are a person. And it's that divided by your self-interest. So
Right.
true trust comes from credibility plus reliability plus intimacy over your self-interest. And this is a really important thing for teams to get their heads round. And it also leads into other concepts like T-shaped leadership. You're not just a leader of your function. Yes, you need to be really good in your functional vertical, but I also need you to operate in a more egalitarian fashion across the enterprise, across our enterprise problems collectively and collaboratively. For that, you need trust. For that, you need credibility, reliability. You need to be intimate within a work sense, and you need to put sometimes your own self-interest to the side, particularly when there are really big challenges in organizations, and many organizations are facing those at the moment.
Yeah.
Many times when I've had to do strategic organizational redesigns, you have to put yourself and you have to get your team to put themselves outside of the process, and it's really hard to do. It really is very hard to do. But if you can get that, then you've got the basis of trust, and you've got it. Because if someone sees you making decisions around your own self-interest all the time, then you will erode trust pretty quickly.
Yeah, looking after yourself, basically. Yeah, basically. Yeah. Yeah, that I've never heard of the trust equation before. That's new on me. So I'll look into that, and I'll tag it onto the podcast when we push it out. One of the things I was going to follow into that, communication. We've talked about communication. Obviously, a lot of the things that you've just discussed there rely heavily on good communication. So I was going to ask you how important that is, but I know you've also talked to me about you must have different styles of communication within your team and be aware of that. So to micro, macro, can you share a bit more information on that? Because I know you're pretty big on the communication style.
Yeah, I think that as you become more mature in your leadership, and this isn't management, this is really about leadership, is you understand that one size of communication does not fit all people. And if you don't adjust the way that you are supporting and developing and leading your staff, then you'll hit 20%, but you won't hit the other 80%. So I've got the 4 models of coaching, mentoring, teaching, and directing. So, coaching help you to come to the answer that I know is in your head. You just need it teased out. Let's work on that. Mentoring, here's some examples of me having a similar problem before. Is that helpful to you? Teaching, this is how I'd suggest you do it, step by step. Different cultures need different levels as well. So I've found working with many different people across the world that some cultures you need to be a little bit more teachy than you do need to be coachy, and vice versa. And then the final one is directive, which hopefully doesn't happen that often, but is sometimes needed, particularly in crisis situations. But the weighting is in that order if you can get it that way. So that's and when I'm talking to different members of my leadership team, or my peers, or my bosses, or people who are in different parts of the organization in different roles, I will adopt one or more of those styles in a conversation. I mean, literally, I can have a conversation for 5 minutes, and I might have used 3 of those different styles in that conversation that's appropriate for that particular conversation and that particular person, depending on what's happening. And that's kind of a learned behavior. It's not something I've ever been taught. It's something that I've learned. I mean, I've been taught coaching, and I've been taught in the past how to be a mentor. Not so much teaching, although I've done a little bit of theory around teaching too in my past, and of course directing is perhaps a little bit more natural. But some of these things come with experience when you see, well, what works with this person. If I'm just telling them what to do all the time, are they going away with a very glum face thinking that I'm micromanaging them? Well, that's obviously not the right style for that person. They probably got the answer themselves. Let's take a different approach. Let's try coaching and seeing if we can get them to answer it themselves. And so I think it is super important that you don't have a one size fits all in terms of communication. you do adjust for the audience. And that goes for when you're presenting to 1,000 people or you're having a conversation with one person.
Okay, perfect. I was going to say, is that is that something you learn as you go along? Because some people have their teams or to do that Myers-Briggs, don't they, and things like that, the heat maps. Would you roll that in yourself, or are you more of a, I really want to understand my team and my peers and my people, and now
Well, those sorts of things are always very useful. They
right?
probably, if you know your team a little bit, you probably won't be surprised by the outcomes of something like a Myers-Briggs. It might give you um, um, some additional information about how to work with, collaborate with, get the best out of a person who is perhaps a certain type of person. That's where the value, I think, lies. For me, it has been, I think, a learnt behavior. There's lots of learnt behaviors. You might not believe it, but naturally I'm an introvert, as a lot of technology people are.
Yeah.
I think I've learned to be an omnivert, where I can uh, seem more extrovert in certain circumstances than in others. So you have to pick up skills as a leader, and you have to be open to those skills. And the more rounded you become over time, the more success you'll have with your team, remembering that your success is also based on the people who work with you and for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we're on the podcast, we're talking about high performing teams and getting the best out of the teams. And I know on previous conversations we've had, you talk passionately about the North Star and being clear on your North Star. Can you
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about, or tell the listeners, a little bit about, you know, why is it so important to have a North Star, and what does it collectively achieve?
Yeah, I think when someone's working within the organization, they work best and are motivated best when they have context, when they understand their part in the whole. And one of the best ways to give that context is to describe what the destination is of this journey, and then to relate that back to those people and their role. So your contribution towards this end goal is this, and it gives context, and that is um, uh, it certainly can be very, very motivating for people, but they understand what their contribution is, and that in itself is motivating. But you do have to give people that North Star direction. You do have to give them what's the objective that we're trying to achieve? Why are we trying to achieve it? What benefit is that going to give, and to who? What problem is it solving? All of these things,
Yeah.
really, the people we work with, they're all intelligent people. And by treating them as an adult to adult, having an adult to adult conversation, not an adult to child, or treating them like an adult to a child, is super important. And you will just get so much more commitment, energy, and motivation from a team that understands where we're going, why we're going there, what the road is to getting there, and their part in it. For me, it's incredibly motivating. I know it's true for my teams, and I don't always get it right. Like many leaders, you don't always get it right. But one of the things you do need to do is you need to be flexible in terms of course correction. So if you don't get it right, if you didn't quite get that communication right, if you didn't quite describe the problems to solve correctly, make sure you do it right the next time, and get feedback, proactively seek feedback from your team, from people who are in different parts of your organization, and get them to tell you and feedback to you. Well, what did you hear when I said that little spiel over there, and I described to you what the objective was? I described to you the benefits, and I described to you the problems to solve and our part in that. What did you hear? And quite often you find that they heard 10% of it, 20% of it, 50% of it. And so
Right.
you kind of have to do it several times and not think it's one and done, because it rarely is. I think there's some psychological a reference that says you have to say it 7 times before it really lands with people. And so you do need to keep saying it. You do need to keep reminding people what our objectives are. And you need to put things in like measurements. You need to put in OKRs and KPIs, and you need to share that with the team and say, we said we were going to be 25% here on this. We're currently 20, but we know next month we're going to catch up. And, sharing progress with people also is towards that objective is also super important as well.
Perfect. That's brilliant. And is that, I think you mentioned it briefly there, would you share the North Star with people outside of your team or your department, but who will be impacted on it? So it's not just a siloed conversation you're having. It's you're trying to get the wider audience involved as well.
Absolutely, everyone who's involved, everyone who is contributing to that objective needs to hear that story. When I first started here in this organisation, a colleague of mine, we worked very, very closely together to set up that objective, to set up that North Star, to set up the teams and work together and making sure that communication wasn't just a technical one, wasn't just a product, a design, a business one, but it was a collective one that everyone was aiming towards the same objectives. One thing we didn't quite get to, which I think is helpful, is that those objectives end up in everyone's personal objectives who's involved in it. Not quite managed to get that one over the line every single time, I have to say, but is definitely one that I would suggest is that you build those common objectives across the wider team, not just your technical team, but across the wider business, so that everyone has skin in the game, everyone understands where we're going and has several different levers to pull in terms of their motivation.
Yeah, that makes sense. That is good. Anybody who's going to be impacted on it needs to know about it. Really, is the main message. And I think talking about getting the best out of your teams, and we've talked a lot about that now, and how you go about it. One of the things that you mentioned to me, and there's only one other person I've had on the podcast that's mentioned this before, so I know a little bit about it, but not much. So if you could expand on it, it'd be brilliant. Reverse mentoring. You talked to me briefly about reverse mentoring. So if you could share that and your experiences and why it's beneficial, what it is, that would be wonderful.
It's one of the most powerful things I think a leader can do, is to reach into the organization and pluck out someone willing to tell you how it is. Holding that mirror up to you as a leader about the impact that you're having personally as an organization on the kind of challenges that they're having within their part of the team is really quite powerful, I have to say. And I've done it a few times now. And I actually had a reverse mentoring session with a member of my team not so long ago. You have to pin your ears back. You have to not give them answers when they say, I've got this problem and X, Y, and Z is causing me grief, and I don't understand why the company. You need to let them say what they want to say and not jump in and give them the answer straight away. It's almost, you can see the cathartic relief in being able to express the challenges and problems that they have. And someone's actually in a senior position, actually sitting there and listening to them. And you have to listen very carefully to what they're saying, and also probably sometimes what they're not saying. And read between the lines. But it is incredibly powerful, and it will hold a mirror up to you and to the organization. It needs to be taken seriously. And of course, then you'll have a conversation. And for me, I've done it in the past with salespeople being in a technical role. That was fascinating. I mean, really what it's like to talk to customers about products and technology and the kind of challenges that a salesperson has, which is so far away from most technical conversations that people in this industry will have, all the way through to someone within my own team who, an incredibly competent guy, but wanted proactively to tell me how it was for him, what he was feeling in his role in this organization, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there was lots of good as well. It wasn't all awful. And those who are doing the reverse mentoring, they do need to be set up for this as well. So what we've done in each time this has happened is they've received some instructions and coaching about how to approach reverse mentoring themselves, so that they can get the best out of it, and so that they can also get what they want to across in the best possible way. So people do need a little bit of coaching often on how to do that and how to be a good reverse mentor. Just like being a normal mentor, you need some training on it. It's the same thing, but yes, it's incredibly powerful. And every time I've done it, it's always instigated and been the catalyst for some kind of change. And so I'm always delighted when it comes around.
Right. Okay. So quite often you've seen the results at the end of it, and there's been some change for the good, if you like, that's come out of it.
Yes. Okay. And often it's something then that I've gone away and either investigated a little bit more, or done some research, had some conversations with people, and said, well, maybe we need to change our approach here in this particular area, or something like that. In every instance that I've had reverse mentoring, it's always ended up in doing something. And I think you, as a leader, you can't go into it with a view of, oh, I've just got to get through this. It's something that HR is telling me I've got to do, or my boss is telling me I've got to do. You do need to see the value in it, and there is huge value. I mean, I do things like round tables, which include people from across my organization, and I get to talk to people within their daily work lives, and they get access to me, and are able to ask me questions directly or give me feedback directly. That's another very powerful tool as well. And we also, although we've stopped doing it at the moment because I've moved on to doing more roundtables, we also have had AMAs, so, ask me anything. And that can also, if that's set up well, that can work quite well with bigger audiences, certainly.
Is that like a larger group, and you just say that we're setting up this session, nothing's off the table, you can ask me anything and wherever possible.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And again, it's part of trust and leadership. It's also I will tell people, I have this concept of state of the nation, and quite often in town halls or AMAs, I'll give the state of the nation. This is what's going on in our organization. It might not just be about technology. It might be about, how are we doing against our budget? Are we going to hit our revenue targets for the year? Is everyone going to get a bonus? These are the things that people are interested in, so that's often a catalyst. Like the somewhat controversial subject of hybrid working or returning back to the office. Having an AMA after a global announcement around that, and we've got, like, I think it's 7,000 people work in our organisation across 90 offices, and when you roll out something like hybrid working, you're going to get some feedback. So you want to not hide away from that. You want to take that on the chin and be able to have a conversation with your folks and let them get it off their chest, but also have an opportunity to reiterate a message and give the line that they need to hear. AMAs work for bigger groups. Sometimes there's a theme, although it can be anything. I think it's a mini AMA when you do like a round table. You tend to get a little bit more out of people. They're a little less shy.
Yeah.
So I really do like roundtables. And as we started talking about reverse mentoring, I think more leaders should do much more of that. It's a very powerful way of understanding what's really happening in your business.
Yeah. You have to be brave and want that knowledge, don't you? You have to want that
Yeah,
feedback. I think,
I want it. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Is the type of leader that can take that. Do you, just quickly before we move on, for the round tables, for anyone listening, how many are we talking? Sort of 10, 15 people, sort of 20 people around it?
Um,
What would you
I
do?
will, I will invite about 8 to 10 people,
Right. Okay.
at any one time. I will quite often bring or invite a member of my leadership. I will tell people it's not mandatory. You don't have to turn
Yeah.
up. This isn't a 3-line whip. This is, if you'd like to come along and have a conversation with me, then please do come along. I'd really love to talk to you. And I get, if I invite 10, I'll get 8 turn up.
Yeah.
A couple might not. That's absolutely fine. If you have more than that, it's a little bit more difficult to really get around everyone and give everyone
Right.
an opportunity to speak. So you'll always, in any of these scenarios, have 2 or 3 people who can dominate the airwaves,
Yeah.
and you need
Yeah.
to make sure as a leader that you are also that quiet guy or girl in the corner who you can see on their face they want to say something. They're just not going to
Yeah.
put their hand up on Teams. You need to go ask them, because that's where the alpha is. And I had this just earlier in the week. We had a round table, 8 people, and there was a software engineer, quite quiet, and he came up with the most insightful comment. And super glad. I said, "Can you come? I can see on your face you want to say something. Here's your opportunity. Tell me what you think." And he did, and it was really good. And everyone was really happy that he'd spoken, because these things often are in everyone's mind. It's just
Yeah.
then getting someone to talk about whatever they thing that's on their mind, and getting them to express it so that you can then have a conversation.
Absolutely. And I suppose it's the awareness of the leader when you're at that round table, being able to draw that information out for people who are a little bit more reserved. Yeah.
Which comes back to some of the other things that we've talked about being vulnerable, about being open, being a human, being trusted. Um, you get the best out of those kinds of conversation if that's how you are perceived.
Yeah.
Um, if um, if you turn up with a very stern face in your suit and your tie, and you stare at everyone, rather than me who's fiddling with my ear and in my t-shirt,
Yeah.
then you're not going to get as much out of people. You're
No.
just not. So there's not to say that wearing a suit is the wrong thing to do for anyone who wears a suit on a regular basis. I used to for 20 years. It's okay.
Just more relaxed now. Yeah, more relaxed. That's it.
Yeah.
Darren, last quick one on the reverse mentoring for anybody who's listening and thinks, actually, I'll have a go at that. We're talking about people at different levels within an organization, aren't we? Or you'd be talking
Yep.
about, yeah, yeah,
Not talking about my peers. I'm talking
yeah,
about someone. So if you think about grades within an organization,
yeah,
so I'm a certain grade, I will want to talk to someone who's at least 3 grades below that, so that
right,
someone who, unlike me, is I mean, I talk all day. That's what I do. I do a lot of talking and a lot of listening, and not a lot of real work. I want to talk to someone who's actually doing real work and coming across real problems, and has real barriers, but also has what's working well here, and how can we build on what's working well. So I want someone at the cold face. I talk to people at my level all the time, but I don't get as many opportunities to talk to the people who are actually making me look good and making my team look good as much as I'd like to. And so that it's a really great opportunity to go talk to the talent within your own organization, and see how they feel about your objectives and your North Star and their part in it. It's always incredibly insightful, but you do have to be open for it. You have to be ready for that mirror of being held up to you, and you have to sometimes listen to some tough things. And people at a different stage in their career might not understand the world in the way that you do, and you just have to also put yourself in their shoes and understand that they don't see the things that you do. They're not involved in the conversations that you are. They don't have perhaps an MBA and understand some of the strategic thinking that's required. But there's nothing wrong with that. They have a perspective, and you should listen to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You need to have your finger on the pulse, don't you? Without a shadow of a doubt. Thank you for that, Darren. That was really, really insightful. Thank you. I think before we wrap up, because I know I've been bending your ear for a while, I wanted to move away from the team aspect a little bit and just ask you, because if you look back in your career, you've been purposely brought in by organisations to deliver a specific thing. You've done a lot of change and transformation pieces of work, haven't you, and that kind of thing. So for any senior leaders that are coming into, they're looking for the next job, they're coming in to do a change and transformation role, or they're just coming into a next senior leader role, when you land within an organisation, what are the first sort of 3 or 4 things that you would look at in your, I imagine you've mentioned sort of 30, 60, 90 days to me in the past, but what are the first few things that you would look at that maybe people can pick up and think, yeah, next time I go into a role, or when I land my next role, I'll look at these as well because they're helpful?
Yeah, I think, success and failure is based on people. Right. So getting to understand the people, and that's your team, but it's also others who are contributing to the outcomes of your team. I think is really important thing to get to get an understanding of, not just from a competency perspective, but from a cultural perspective. Is this a high performing team? Does this team have trust? Are they collaborative? Are they T-shaped individuals, or are they very functionally driven? Are they scared? Do they feel psychological safety? So that's a really important part. What's the level of politics in this organization? Is it positive politics or is it negative politics? That's something that we've talked about before. Yeah. So that's important to understand. I think then it's more of the nitty gritty of what are the big problems to solve here. I've been brought in to do a certain thing, but what's underpinning this in terms of a problem to solve? So that's super important. And then obviously, who's going to help me solve them? Because I'm not going to be able to solve all these things myself on my own. Who's going to help me solve them? And that might be people who are not in your team, who are not in your direct line of accountability. It might be people in other teams who don't owe you anything, and identifying them and then working on how you can, build that trusting relationship with them so that you can get them on board is so super important. Identifying those people is absolutely critical. And then, of course, the big one is where are the blockers? Is it financial? Do I have a budget issue? Is it a cultural issue? Is it a people issue? Do I not have the right talent? Do I need to provide more training? Do I need to give that North Star conversation that we've had? Are people just unclear about where we're going? What are the things that are getting in the way of this being successful? Fundamentally, what are the things that I need to push out of the way to be successful, and the reason why I've been brought in? I think if you can nail those 4 in the first 100 days, 90 to 100 days, you'd be doing well.
Yeah.
And of course, depending on the role, the urgency, I think we talked about an instance in Y2K, which may be before some of your listeners' time, but I was working for a consultancy. I was brought into a FTSE 100 company, who shall remain nameless, to save them from a Y2K disaster. It was August, and they had estimated it would take 2.5 years to become Y2K compliant, and it was August 1999. And so I did not have the ability to leisurely have 90 days to work all this out. I had to do all of this in 1 week, and then have a plan. And happily, we did get it sorted by late November, and that FTSE 100 company did not end up on the news. Um, but so the speed at which you need to do these things may be different, but you need to do them, and I'm sure other people will have other views on that, and other things that they would emphasize more than others. So do we have problems with our suppliers? Do we have too much legacy technology here?
Yeah.
Is the technical debt just too large? Is it just too costly to run? Is the change just too difficult? That's when that's when they bring in someone like me.
Yeah, yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. What's the? I'm laughing a bit because there's probably a number of answers to this, but what's your biggest red flag that culture's shot to pieces and needs looking at?
I think when you see those real negatives, when you see people um, uh, not building trust, when they don't have trust, where that dynamic around self-interest is predominating, when people are not aligned towards a common goal, a common objective, and are just talking about what their accountability is, and not worrying about anyone else, is very I-shaped, not T-shaped. Those
Yeah,
are real red flags. And I think whenever you go for a new role, whether that's a promotion or a sideways move within a company, sideways moves are very useful. I've
yeah,
done lots of them in my time.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
or you move to another company, you really need to understand that from whoever's going to be your manager. You need to understand what culture they're bringing to the team, whether you feel that they have that kind
Mm,
of trust and credibility, because that will set the tone for the whole team, and the whole part of that organization. Is super, super important. Culture is also one of the hardest and most expensive things to change as well, and it takes time, and it takes money, and you have to provide a lot of training. It's a whole change process. You need to lead from the front. You need to find who your change agents are.
yeah,
Sometimes you need to let people go who are just not going to come on that journey with you. You need to hire the right people who already have that culture. All of these things are super important. If you've got a stuck culture, it's one of the most challenging situations, because everything gets delivered by people, even in the
yeah,
world of AI.
yeah.
Ultimately, it's down to people, and if you've got a cranky culture, then you're in for a rough time.
Yeah, it's difficult. I think it's amazing how many people think culture's just one and done. And it evolves, doesn't it, over time? It can literally change with you, with the next hire or the next couple of hires you make or the next decisions you make. It's forever evolving.
It is, and there's the microculture within your organization, and even there's cultures within your teams within a team. Um, but there's also the macro cultures as well. We've got teams from around the world, and they all have different fundamental cultures. And we've spent actually quite a bit of time understanding each other. We've had sessions where, sometimes we make it light-hearted. It's like our propensity in the UK to talk about the weather, for instance, is the first thing we always talk about. We did when we first started this conversation. We were talking about the weather. And to some of our colleagues, well, the weather's the same every day. What are you talking about? It's like, and it can be quite amusing. So it's good to understand it not just at the micro level, but also at the macro level. If you're going to have successful teams that are global, those leaders who have global teams, which many do, you can't have just dare I say, a Western approach to everything, because you need to be empathetic to the culture of. And you know, we could talk for hours just on this subject, because it is super important. If you want to get the best out of your team in some part of Asia or somewhere else in the world, even nearshore like Poland or Spain or other places, then people have different cultures, and you need to understand that. You need to work with them on it, and not think from a slightly more imperialistic view of yours is the only culture that matters, because it's not true.
Exactly. And when you've got the team spread around the world, it goes, just to go back to your point earlier on communication, it's where communication is so important. There will definitely be different types of communication based on, I suppose, what nationality you're speaking to.
Oh, I can tell you, I give a very different presentation when I'm with my team and I'm in the Philippines and I'm in my team in Manila, than I do if I'm giving the same presentation to my team, and it's just a UK-based team. The content, the messages are the same, the delivery is different, the peripheral parts about it are often very different, and that's because having worked with those colleagues for many years, I have a level of understanding of what resonates with them.
Yeah.
And what probably will bore them to death. So there's so again, you know, you see these leaders who will rock up to 20 different offices around the world, and they'll give exactly the same
Yeah.
presentation in exactly the same way. And while the message always has to be similar or the same, you need to get the points across. The way you deliver it, you need to be cognizant of the culture. And I mean, in its direst situation, you can really annoy some people if you get it wrong, and disenfranchise whole teams if you just literally, you can say a few words. And I've had this with a member of my team. Did a presentation, made a joke, and it fell very, very flat. Because whilst, in the Western world, that would have landed quite well. In Asia, it really didn't. And so, you know, you have to be, and I was holding my head in my hands. Oh, it's all coming back to me. It was a trauma. And I felt so badly for him, because he just went completely flat the whole rest died.
No.
So, but that was a great learning opportunity for him. We'll take a positive from it. And so yes, these are important things: communication and the style of communication. One size never fits all.
Exactly. And just before we wrap up, very quickly, you mentioned, we talked about it, positive and negative office politics. You mentioned politics to people. Politics people think is never good. So what do you mean about positive and negative office politics, and how could that impact?
Well, I think to be human is to be political. A lot of people say, "Well, I'm not political." I'm afraid you are. Everyone is, to a degree or another. Um, uh, People say I am what I am, well, that's a political statement. But I was very fortunate early in my career to go on a course around positive office politics, and it is one of the things that has stayed with me ever since, which is we are going to be political. That's, to be human is to be political, but to do it in a positive way, in a collaborative way, and bringing people with you is a positive political approach, being self-serving, being eye-shaped all the time, not being collaborative, withholding knowledge, all of the
Yeah.
things that we've talked about today, that can be very negative politics. And it actually doesn't help you, doesn't help the team, doesn't help the company that you're working for or that you're leading. And so I'm a proponent of recognizing that we are political by nature, but that we should very much focus on being political in a positive way, political in a way that helps us meet our objectives, both for the organization, for our departments, and for us individually, and for the whole team. And I think if you can go in with that mindset, then those other things that we've talked about being human, being trusted, having a level of vulnerability, etc., all play into that common narrative. It's all linked.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Darren. That's great. One final, I promise you, final question. And I think this will be of interest to people, especially in the world we're in at the moment and at your senior level. So getting your insights. Your biggest pain point as a senior leader at the moment, what would that be?
I think outside of the macro events, I think it's AI
Yeah.
is both the biggest pain point and the biggest opportunity. It's very similar to the dot-com boom and the introduction of Web 2.0, the thing that we're using right now, is probably the biggest concern, particularly as I'm a little bit more mature in my career, being able to understand and pivot. As you know, I've written a book on how to get cracking and implement AI in the SMB world, because there's a lot of hype around it. I've been concerned ever since I've been involved in it around the costs. I've been a board member on an AI company before, the sort of generalist AI that we have now. Before ChatGPT ever came out, we were looking at networked AI, and I was on the board of a company over the last 10 years. So I've been involved in AI in one way or another. It has such huge opportunities, but from a technical point of view, the maturity curve, which is very similar to the .com boom. I won't mention the organizations just in case anyone sues me for defamation, but there are agentic tools out there which have been massively hyped and have huge potential, but they are not mature. They have got security flaws. They have got production flaws and all sorts of challenges around operations, observability, and etc. But they're maturing really quickly. Blink and they've solved that problem. Blink again, and they're bringing out a new dynamic way of doing something that you just know is going to save you time. But I think the biggest challenge in this is not many organizations are seeing a return on investment of their AI projects at this point in time. And it's kind of a case of you've got to be in it to win it. I hate to use that, but you do. And you've got to have a level of investment within AI and trust that this is going to turn out to be something of benefit to your organization, because I genuinely think it will be. I still, in the back of my mind, have concerns about the cost base. I have concerns about the environmental impacts of AI, as I know many people do. I have concern about what it means for people's roles and their jobs. Although I often talk about there's change in technology. I've been through a few versions of this. You need to look at what the new skill sets that you need to have it is the reason I wrote the book, is to understand it better myself, particularly being at this stage of my career and at my age. It forced me to have a deeper understanding of what people in the business are asking me to give my advice on. And so I think it's how can we continue to invest in something that on the face of it isn't necessarily delivering the return on investment that was promised. There was a massive height curve at the beginning. I know that executive boards had visits from consultants who came along in the very early days and said, you know, you can get rid of 50% of your staff, or whatever they were saying. And the reality is truly biting. But I genuinely think that there are huge benefits to have through this technology. It does need to mature. We do need to understand the cost base. We do need to understand the impact it has on the environment, on our people, what kind of skills people need for the future, to invest and develop our own staff, as well as bring talent into the organization, and give people the skills for the future, and help them see that there is a career and that there is a path for them, which this AI revolution will provide. So there's a big change curve here, and but we've got to be on. You know, it's the old adage of you know, the train's leaving the station. You need to be on the train. You need to be in one of those carriages. You can't be on the station platform on this one. You've got to get on it, and you've got to be with it, and you've got to go with it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much, Darren. Really good insight into what you're seeing, obviously, at your level at the moment. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me on the podcast this afternoon. It was brilliant to have you on as a guest, and some cracking insights there, some real usable insights. So thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. And thanks for taking the time.
No problem. Cheers, Darren.